Walter Stadnick's name commands both fear and respect, even years after his reign as one of Canada's most notorious criminals. At just 5 feet 4 inches, he defied the odds, becoming the third national president of the Hells Angels in Canada and reshaping the nation's organized crime landscape. His rise wasn't just a tale of ambition, it was a journey through loyalty, betrayal, resilience, and power struggles in a world where survival required constant adaptation. This is the story of a man who turned his small stature into a towering presence in the underworld. Born in 1952 in Hamilton, Ontario, Stadnick was the son of Ukrainian immigrants. His childhood was far from what one might expect for a future criminal mastermind. A quiet and well-behaved boy, he attended church regularly and gave little indication of the storm brewing within him. But adolescence brought a profound change. By the time he entered high school, Stadnick had transformed into a tough, ambitious teenager who was unafraid to make waves. High school was where Stadnick's criminal path began. Known for his intelligence and natural mechanical skills, he excelled in auto shop, but his academic interests stopped there. While his peers were focused on grades and future careers, Stadnick had carved out his own path as the school's principal drug dealer. He fought frequently, earning a reputation for his toughness despite his diminutive size. It was during this time that he founded his first gang, the Cacks, a small group of like-minded individuals whose name paid homage to their Ukrainian heritage. By the age of 18, Stadnick had already caught the attention of law enforcement. His first arrest came in 1971 when he was found in possession of LSD, followed soon after by another charge for carrying hash. During one courtroom appearance, chaos erupted as his gang members caused a brawl with the police, a dramatic event that hinted at the loyalty Stadnick could inspire in his peers. His time in custody gave him the opportunity to reflect on his choices, but rather than deterring him, it solidified his commitment to the criminal world. Stadnick's first significant setback came when he sought to join Satan's Choice, Canada's largest motorcycle gang. Despite his ambitions, the gang's leader, Mario Parente, rejected him outright, deeming his height a liability. For most, this rejection would have been the end of the road, but Stadnick saw it as a challenge. He joined a smaller group, the Wild Ones, and quickly took control as their leader. While leading the Wild Ones, Stadnick began working with the Musano crime family, taking on tasks that included bombings, assassinations, and enforcing protection rackets. These activities expanded his network and influence in Canada's criminal underworld. But it wasn't until the late 1970s that his path intersected with the organization that would define his legacy, the Hells Angels. During the Montreal Biker War, a bloody conflict between Satan's Choice and the Popeyes, Stadnick saw an opportunity. With US-based clubs like the Outlaws and the Hells Angels fueling the violence, Stadnick proposed an alliance between the Wild Ones and the Hells Angels. In October 1978, he met Yves Buteau, the Hells Angels leader, to discuss a potential patchover. The meeting was ambushed by the Outlaws, resulting in several deaths, though Stadnick survived. While Stadnick was in Montreal, his gang in Hamilton faced its own destruction. Mario Parente, the same man who had denied him entry into Satan's Choice, orchestrated the dismantling of the Wild Ones, leaving Stadnick without a base to return to. Forced to relocate, Stadnick moved to Montreal, where he began integrating himself further into the Hells Angels network. By May 26, 1982, Stadnick officially became a member of the Hells Angels, thanks in part to his friendship with Noel Mailloux, who acted as his translator and ally. His induction was a pivotal moment in his career, but it came with its own set of challenges. Stadnick's efforts to establish an Ontario chapter of the Hells Angels met resistance. An attempt to patch over the Vagabonds gang fell apart due to financial disputes and issues related to drug trafficking, and tensions with the rival Outlaws remained a constant threat. Despite these struggles, Stadnick's resilience never wavered. In 1983, tragedy struck when Yves Buteau was assassinated. Stadnick, on his way to attend Buteau's funeral, was involved in a motorcycle accident that left him seriously injured. While recovering in the hospital, he was guarded by both the Hells Angels and the police, a clear indication of the power and influence he had accumulated. Stadnick's ability to rebound from personal and professional setbacks became one of his defining traits. After his recovery, he facilitated the patchover of the Halifax-based 13th Tribe, successfully expanding the Hells Angels' presence in eastern Canada. This move not only strengthened his position within the organization but also reinforced his reputation as a leader who could deliver results. However, Stadnick's ambitions in Ontario remained a source of frustration. He operated covertly in cities like Hamilton and Toronto, attempting to forge alliances with local gangs. While these efforts showcased his strategic mind, they also highlighted the challenges of maintaining power in a fractured and competitive criminal landscape. Betrayals, financial disagreements, and ongoing conflict with rival groups like the Outlaws often undermined his progress. Throughout his career, several themes stood out. Stadnick's ambition drove him to continually seek greater power, even in the face of repeated failures. His ability to inspire loyalty within the Hells Angels was crucial to his survival, especially as he faced betrayals from figures like Mario Parente and rival gangs. Violence and power struggles were constants in his life, but so too were his adaptability and resilience. One of the most striking aspects of Stadnick's story was his ability to overcome cultural barriers. As an English speaker in a predominantly French-speaking organization, he relied on allies like Mayu and his strategic instincts to navigate the complexities of language and culture. This adaptability further solidified his place within the Hells Angels and allowed him to build connections that transcended regional divisions. The Lennoxville Massacre refers to a violent incident that took place on March 22, 1985, at a Hells Angels clubhouse in Lennoxville, Quebec, during a meeting between several members of the Hells Angels and the rival Outlaws motorcycle gang. The massacre occurred when a power struggle between factions of the Hells Angels and the Outlaws turned into an all-out shootout. Walter Stadnick was not directly involved in the massacre, but the event played a pivotal role in solidifying his status and influence within the Hells Angels. It contributed to the escalation of violence and gang rivalries, as well as increasing tensions between competing outlaw motorcycle gangs in Canada. In the aftermath of the Lennoxville Massacre, Walter Stadnick emerged as a principal figure in the Hells Angels organization. His election as national president was not a mere coincidence but a strategic necessity. Police and internal observers viewed his ascension as both calculated and inevitable. Stadnick stood out as the last remaining leader with the unique combination of seniority and intelligence. While many of his predecessors and contemporaries had been eliminated or imprisoned, he possessed the rare ability to navigate the treacherous landscape of organized crime with calculated precision. The most critical element of Stadnick's early leadership was his strategic alliance with the Montreal Mafia. This partnership was far from a simple criminal collaboration. It was a carefully orchestrated economic strategy that would redefine the Hells Angels' approach to drug trafficking. The Montreal Mafia's control over the city's ports provided an unprecedented advantage. By leveraging this connection, Stadnick gained cheap and reliable access to drug shipments. This strategic positioning allowed the Hells Angels to dominate street-level narcotics sales with an economic edge that was nearly unbeatable. The financial implications were profound. By undercutting competitors' prices, the Hells Angels could secure a dominant position in the drug market. This approach transformed their business model from a purely violent enterprise to a sophisticated economic operation that prioritized strategic advantage over brute force. Stadnick's approach to expansion was markedly different from his predecessors. Where previous leadership might have relied on violent confrontation, he introduced a nuanced strategy of diplomacy and strategic negotiation. His first move was to consolidate power within Quebec. Stadnick appointed Boo as his Quebec lieutenant, and together they began rebuilding the organization's strength. Their most significant early victory was negotiating a patchover with the Vikings in Quebec City, a move that expanded their territorial influence without resorting to violence. From this Quebec base, Stadnick set his sights on national expansion. He identified two key provinces as critical to the Hells Angels' growth. One was Ontario, the most populous and wealthy region in Canada, offering lucrative drug markets that could sustain and grow the organization. And the other was Manitoba, a strategic location that provided access to drug markets in Western Canada and the U.S. Midwest. His approach was captured perfectly in a telling quote, He would rather buy his rival a drink than kick his head in. This philosophy marked a fundamental shift in the Hells Angels' operational strategy, prioritizing negotiation and strategic alliance over violent confrontation. In Northern Ontario, Stadnick employed a particularly innovative approach. Recognizing the region as hostile to traditional Hells Angels expansion, he developed a covert network strategy that would become his hallmark. Instead of establishing official chapters in Southern Ontario, a region dominated by rival clubs and the mafia, Stadnick took a different path. He carefully partnered with local drug dealers, supplying them with drugs at prices that systematically undercut competitors. This created a clandestine support network that allowed the Hells Angels to establish a presence without drawing unnecessary attention. The region was not without challenges. Clubs like the Lost Bravos in Winnipeg, the Grim Reapers in Alberta, and Satan's Choice in Thunder Bay formed an alliance specifically designed to block the Hells Angels' expansion. But Stadnick had a strategy for this as well. He recruited Donald Magnuson, a notorious and violent criminal, as his personal bodyguard. Together, they frequently visited Winnipeg, strategically exploiting vulnerabilities in the Anti-Angels alliance. Magnuson's violent reputation preceded him, creating an additional layer of intimidation and strategic pressure. Stadnick's most brilliant strategy emerged in Winnipeg, where a violent conflict raged between the Lost Bravos and Spartans. Where other leaders might have seen this as a potential threat, Stadnick saw an opportunity for strategic manipulation. He introduced both clubs to the drug trade, positioning himself as the primary supplier for both groups. This audacious move allowed him to remain neutral while simultaneously profiting from both sides of the conflict. By carefully managing the tensions and economic interests of these rival clubs, Stadnick cemented his influence and demonstrated an extraordinary ability to manipulate intergang rivalries. The outcome was a testament to his strategic genius. While the Lost Bravos and Spartans remained locked in their conflict, Stadnick emerged as the true winner, controlling the economic flow that sustained both groups and expanding the Hells Angels' influence in the process. This approach went beyond traditional criminal expansion strategies. It represented a sophisticated understanding of economic power, interpersonal dynamics, and the delicate balance of criminal ecosystems. Stadnick was not just leading a criminal organization, he was orchestrating a complex economic and social strategy that prioritized long-term growth over short-term violence. His methods revealed a profound understanding of power, that true control comes not from force, but from strategic positioning, economic manipulation, and the ability to turn potential conflicts into opportunities for expansion. Stadnick's efforts to expand the Hells Angels' reach into Ontario during the mid-1990s were marked by ambition but ultimately led to a series of miscalculations that tarnished his reputation. Seeking to dominate Ontario's lucrative biker market, he orchestrated the formation of a puppet club, the Demon Keepers, as a front to flood the region with cheap drugs and undercut rival groups. However, the plan unraveled rapidly. Language barriers between Quebec-based members and Ontario recruits hampered communication and operational efficiency. Key arrests further weakened the Demon Keepers' structure, leading to their collapse. This failure not only stymied the Hells Angels' incursion into Ontario but also dealt a severe blow to Stadnick's standing within the organization. Amidst this turmoil, the betrayal of Danny Kane, a trusted Hells Angels associate, proved even more consequential. Feeling abandoned by Stadnick, Kane became an informant for the RCMP, providing intelligence that would later fuel significant law enforcement actions against the club. Meanwhile, internal rivalries began to surface, threatening to fracture the Montreal chapter. Scott Steiner, a charismatic American Hells Angel, capitalized on Stadnick's missteps. Building alliances within the chapter, Steiner openly challenged Stadnick's leadership, leveraging the Ontario failure as proof of his ineffectiveness. Steiner's growing influence drew away Magnuson, Stadnick's former bodyguard, who defected to Steiner's side. Stadnick responded with calculated determination. To counter Steiner's ascent, he established the Nomads, an elite chapter with a mandate extending across Canada. The Nomads became a powerful tool for consolidating Stadnick's influence, with its core group, known as the L Table, ensuring unwavering loyalty among top members. This strategic maneuver diminished Steiner's standing and preserved Stadnick's position within the Hells Angels hierarchy. As internal conflicts simmered, the Quebec Biker War erupted in 1994, marking a bloody chapter in the Hells Angels' history. The war began with Maurice Boucher's ultimatum to rival Quebec biker gangs, notably the Rock Machine, igniting a violent struggle for supremacy. Over the next 6 years, the conflict claimed more than 162 lives, cementing its place as one of the deadliest biker wars in history. Stadnick entrusted Boucher and the Nomads to manage the war effort in Quebec, allowing him to focus on expanding the Hells Angels' reach across Canada. Stadnick employed a mix of manipulative strategies to bolster the club's influence in Western Canada. He orchestrated alliances and mergers between puppet clubs, such as uniting the Redliners with Los Bravos after destabilizing the Spartans. These maneuvers not only expanded the Hells Angels' territory but also strengthened their hold on key drug trafficking routes. However, Stadnick was equally ruthless in eliminating internal threats. Danny Kane's betrayal bore fruit for law enforcement, leading to the exposure of Steiner as a liability. By 1996, both Steiner and Magnusson were murdered under Stadnick's orders, removing his most prominent challengers and consolidating his control. The patchover of Los Bravos further solidified the Hells Angels' dominance in Manitoba, marking a turning point in Stadnick's reclamation of authority. By the late 1990s, Stadnick turned his attention back to Ontario. The assassination of Johnny Papalia, a prominent Hamilton Mafia figure, created a power vacuum in Ontario's underworld. Stadnick capitalized on this opportunity, forging alliances with local criminal leaders like Gerald Ward in Niagara Falls through a combination of intimidation and lucrative offers. The Hells Angels' strategy in Ontario mirrored their earlier expansion efforts but with greater precision. Cheap drugs and membership incentives were used to entice smaller clubs, while high-profile summits signaled their dominance. The Loners, a prominent Ontario biker gang, became a primary target. By December 2000, Stadnick had orchestrated a mass patchover event that saw over 160 members from multiple clubs join the Hells Angels, firmly establishing Ontario as their stronghold. The Hells Angels' dominance across Canada by the early 2000s was undeniable, but it came at a price. In March 2001, Operation Springtime struck a devastating blow to the organization. Based on intelligence provided by Danny Kane, law enforcement launched a coordinated nationwide raid, arresting 143 members, including Stadnick. Charges ranged from murder to drug trafficking and gang-related activities. In 2004, Stadnick was convicted and sentenced to 14 years in prison. Though he maintained a reputation as a model inmate, his involvement in a loan sharking operation in 2006 demonstrated that his criminal enterprises persisted even behind bars. Stadnick was released from prison in 2014 and adopted a reclusive lifestyle. Reports suggest he now works as a construction worker and rarely makes public appearances, with the last notable sighting occurring at a Hells Angels funeral in 2019. His legacy, however, remains a subject of debate. While he successfully brought the Hells Angels to national dominance in Canada, it came at the cost of internal divisions and heightened law enforcement scrutiny. Questions linger about his current role within the organization and the extent of his influence in shaping its future. As the saga of Stadnick and the Hells Angels unfolds, it leaves behind a complex narrative of ambition, loyalty, and betrayal. His rise and fall serve as a cautionary tale about the perils of unchecked power and the relentless pursuit of dominance. The Hells Angels, despite their triumphs, now face the enduring challenge of navigating a landscape reshaped by Stadnick's legacy. For those drawn to stories of intrigue, ambition, and conflict, Stadnick's chapter in the Hells Angels' history offers both a compelling study of criminal enterprise and a sobering reflection on the cost of power. If you found this story as captivating as it is chilling, consider delving deeper into the untold accounts of organized crime's most notorious figures. Subscribe to our channel, where we uncover the secrets behind the power, betrayal, and ambition that define these hidden worlds.